refrain from riding out?
They didn't have a ramp for me, but I helped bring my getaway car everywhere.
Okay, well, we'll talk about the getaway cars. This is Nico Sell. She's the co-founder and chairperson of Wickr. We're going to be talking about what Wickr does, why it's related to personal privacy, and talk a bit about privacy when it comes in collision with national security, at least in the minds of some people. So first, tell me a little about Wickr. You know, what is it, when did you start it, and why is it called Wickr?
All right, so Wickr is a free app that all of you should download and use with your most loved ones, I would say, so you can chat freely. You're probably really not doing that right now. Wickr is also used by spies, really, activists fighting dictators, and teenagers all over the world. We're in 200 countries and territories, millions of users at this point.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why spies and other folks like that use it is because it's encrypted. And
yeah, thanks, Steven.
You might want to mention that.
So Wickr, it's a messaging app, but it's encrypted. And there's actually, we've seen a lot of this lately, right? There's WhatsApp is doing end-to-end encryption, and Viber. And that's fantastic. I think the more encryption we have out there, the better. But the big reason why spies and activists use us versus anyone else is Wickr also doesn't have activity logs. So we don't see who's talking to who, when and how often, and that's also just as important as the content of the message.
So when I'm using the iPhone and, you know, understand the FBI might be unhappy with the iPhone, even though it's encrypted, and if I'm using WhatsApp, which has encryption built in, they could still find out a lot of stuff about me what they can't find out when they use Wickr. Is that right?
That is right. And so it's interesting for me to hear the FBI talking about going dark, because I really think that they're blinded by the light. The amount of data that each of us is putting out there these days that can be used by law enforcement is incredible. And they haven't been able to really use even that data that they have yet.
Are you blinded by the light, Nico? You're wearing sunglasses. Can you tell me why that is?
So I have never had pictures of my eyes on the internet. And that's a little extreme for most people, but I think it's a good visual representation of that everyone really needs to be aware of the digital footprint that they're leaving out there. Because it can be used against you to manipulate you. Just last week, there was an artist that was taking pictures of people on the subway and able to connect that with their financial information and their home addresses. So the more pictures you have about yourself, the faster these kind of pieces of software work. And so trying to keep it this way as long as possible.
Wait, but you're doing this as a symbol, or you're doing this because you're concerned about your own privacy?
So I'm doing it because I'm concerned about my own privacy. So I obviously, if I was never on the internet until recently, it's something that I've believed in for a long time.
Well, it's like you're on a subway and you see someone wearing a surgical mask, and you figure, man, am I going to catch something? What does this person know that I don't? You're the only person in this room wearing sunglasses, as far as I can see. So are the rest of us now making a huge mistake? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I think that there's other ways that you can think about decreasing your digital footprint. Your face is already out there, Steven, so there's not much you can do about it at this point.
Maybe you can get some of your hackers to start wiping those pictures.
Or makeup artists, more likely. But so we have, Chris Hagnaghi hosts a social engineering contest at DEF CON every year. And they're able to get 100% of the targets, 100% of the time, using the phone and Facebook to manipulate people. If you think about how you met your lover, right? It's because you like to go to the same places on vacation, the same books, the same music. The information that you're leaving out there is used by hackers to manipulate you all the time. And so just being aware of what you're leaving out there, and if it's potentially being used used to manipulate you, is something that all of us can do.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'm going to channel my inner James Comey, the head of the FBI, who is not a big fan of encryption.
Actually, I'd say they probably use it.
Yeah, well,
they probably use it every day.
So you think he loves the fact that the people use Wicker there?
They use it. Right.
Well.
And yeah, so it's an interesting position that they're in there.
Well, as you know, as, someone who might be taking a similar stance to him, let me ask you: do you think that ISIS uses Wicker?
Yeah, ISIS does use Wicker.
ISIS. How do you know?
So all of our users are anonymous on Wicker. So the only reason
they send you a postcard thanking you
that celebrities and billionaires use Wicker is if they tweet about us or
so
they
ISIS
put it on
is tweeting
Facebook.
Endorsements to you.
So yes, they have done that.
So how do you feel about that? Do you feel good about that? Is that an endorsement that you embrace? Do you retweet it?
So what I feel good about is that the guys fighting ISIS depend on Wicker and use it every day. And I think we need to kind of raise the level and think about this on a different way, which is that any good tool, you're all technologists in here, right? If you make a good tool, it's guaranteed to be used by bad people. Bad people use screwdrivers, they use clothing. And what we have to do is decide, are we better off as society with or without that tool? And it's my belief that private communications is actually one of the most important human rights for our society. This is how we have strong social discourse. And it's tremendously important for democracy.
Well, maybe it is important for democracy on one hand, but we have to balance out, I'm saying from my devil's advocate stance, the damage that could be done if the tool is misused. So an atom bomb, for instance, that could be a tool too. And at one point they were thinking of using atom bombs to power spaceships, right? And that would be pretty cool. But generally, I think the outcome was they decided that maybe atom bombs, really, we shouldn't make a whole lot of them. It probably wouldn't be a good idea. And maybe the power to speak in a way where if the government can identify someone who might be planning a horrible thing, that they should be able to see what's going on there to stop that horrible thing.
And they can without looking at the actual content of the messages, right? This goes back to the blinded by the light.
Well, you just told me that you protect not only the contents, but the metadata there. So I'm planning, the next 9/11. I have Wicker. I saw the thing you retweeted from ISIS. I think, hey, that's a great idea.
By the way, we didn't retweet the ISIS
okay,
thing,
well.
But, and
now
so,
you're pulling
and
back.
so
I'm grilling you pretty good.
Thanks, James.
But what about that? I mean, are you denying that could be like super helpful to someone to be able to communicate securely if they're planning like a big, ambitious attack on a city, like Paris or Brussels or New York City or New Orleans?
I would argue that what's the most helpful is for all of the cops and intelligence services to be able to use secure communication so that they can fight these bad guys properly. So this is a tool that's used in the field every day. And also, encryption in general is used, beyond the good guys and the bad guys, but everyone in this room, it's used for everything that we do, right? Whit Diffie has developed something that we depend on every day for all of our commerce. And so it goes beyond just the good guys and bad guys here, and it's really about society as a whole.
Right, but when you use, HTTPS, right, and that, in your browser, that great encryption's built into it. That's one thing. But when encryption is being able to be used in a way where even with a warrant, the government can't get it, like in the Apple case, at least they couldn't get it at first. Don't you think that that could go too far? Clearly, you don't. But I think an argument can be made, saying at certain times we need to see that.
And I would agree, if you could actually do, at a certain time, we need this, and it's only a couple times,
right,
that might be true, but that's just not the way that math,
can they do that?
And crypto and technology works.
Can they do that with Wicker? If they came to you and said, there's someone plotting something, we need to know what they're saying on Wicker. How would you help them?
Well, we would help them like we always do. All the technology companies always help law enforcement. We do all the time. How you help them is where the question is. Would we change and write new code or new architecture that would compromise our users to help them? No. No one's going to do that. And that's really in the Apple case.
Without writing it, you're saying there's no way to do it. So you built a system that enables you to say, hey, I can't do anything. Isn't that being complicit in blocking legal attempts to find out what someone, who we know is doing something bad, what they're up to there?
Well, the reason that we did this is because you, like me, right? We spent a lot of time being educated by the best hackers in the world.
Mm-hmm. That's my non-devil's advocate guy.
Yeah. Sorry, not use James, but actually they also are educated by the best hackers in the world. And you quickly learn that we built our system this way, and we're the only messaging app that has not been hacked or had a 0-day today, because the way that we built this publicly. How about that? Publicly. Had one, and it's because we built the system from the ground up to say, if we're holding something, we know hackers will get it. Mm-hmm. Like, we've learned that lesson. The reason why at DEF CON it's $200 cash only at the door, same reason. We don't want to hold the
What's
list.
DEF CON? You should explain that.
So DEF CON is the largest hacker conference in the world.
And what's your relationship to it?
And I help with the Fed's relations, so bringing in General Alexander. Mm-hmm. And actually, that's one of the reasons that the reason that I came up with Wicker was because I essentially, when there's 0 days that an attacker has, and we need to be able to communicate this information to different people, you need this kind of technology that's unbreakable.
Well, someone might not know what a 0-day is.
Okay, yeah, and so a 0-day is essentially a flaw in a piece of software that the corporation doesn't know about and hasn't fixed yet.
Right, so the 0-day means there's 0 days to someone finding the flaw, and it's a version flaw, right?
And so, we see that encryption is used in all these really powerful good ways every day. And it's a global resource, right? So if you're able to put a hole in it in this one specific way, it's not good for any of us.
But as far as you know, there's been no 0 days with Wicker.
There has been no 0 days with Wicker, and I would say the reason why, and an important lesson for all of you, is hire hackers. We hire lots of hackers. We have hackers pen testing us right now. And you all need to too, because hackers are your best friends. They're not your enemies. Mm-hmm. And you can get them on your side by pen testing and through bug bounties. Mm-hmm. I think that's something Apple could do better, is have a bug bounty program.
So, but how do you know that, the feds, you say you're very friendly with the feds, you're buddies with General Alexander when he was the director of the NSA. Maybe he's friendly to you because he knows how to break your software.
Yeah, so it was actually a funny story here. One of the pretty key reasons that we know that Wicker hasn't been hacked yet, besides the reason that people aren't dying in the field, because that's really the true tale, unfortunately, is that a hacking team is a group of hackers for hire out of Italy, a really famous group of hackers, and their email was hacked, and all of their emails were put online. And as part of those hacked emails, it showed that the DHS was paying hacking team to try to hack into Wicker and hadn't successfully yet. And that was got a lot of high fives at DEF CON for that, definitely.
Now, if I were running an intelligence service, and I guess as a devil's advocate, maybe I am, what I would do is I would do exactly that. If I found a vulnerability in your software, I would make it known that I hired all these hackers to try to break it, and they didn't break it there. Right? There's levels of deception there.
Well, and I think really what we need to get at here as a whole is that there will be vulnerabilities in everything. Wicker will have a vulnerability one day. I mean, we're not delusional. And it's really that these vulnerabilities need to be more expensive and harder to do, because right now, you were part of it. We teach the kids how to break into lawful intercept machines and how to eavesdrop on your cell phone calls and text messages and how to turn on your interfacing camera on your phone. So these things are too easy right now, and they need to be very difficult. And then, yes, the very best governments in the world in very specific situations may be able to get in, but they'll take it a lot more seriously because it's going to cost a lot of money and a lot of manpower to do that. And we just need to raise the level for everyone here so that it's not easy and cheap like it is.
Didn't you tell me that you once were asked to put a backdoor in Wicker?
Yeah, so I was the first CEO to publicly say no to a backdoor. I was approached pre-Snowden when no one really knew that the FBI was going around and asking CEOs for...
Who asked you?
So it was an agent.
An agent of what?
Of the FBI. Or at least he identified himself and had a badge that said so. Some of me questions, spy versus spy. But
exactly what was this person asking? That you actually literally...
They literally asked for a backdoor.
Something that they would get the information, if you gave them the key?
Yes, and I mean, and think about it, right? If you're just a technologist and you haven't been educated by the best hackers in the world and haven't learned how to break into a lawful intercept machine, the government comes to you and they're like, help us catch bad guys. Well, I want to help catch bad guys. All of us do, right? And so, your response is, yes, I want to help. And our response is still that today, but how you help is it. And so what I told the FBI is I said, listen, you and I are on the same side here, but I'm not going to put a backdoor in our system because it's not good for you and it's not good for me. And this is not how we should go about solving this problem. And we need to find a better way to do it. And we've been lucky enough to survive this long. And it's mainly because, unlike LavaBit, which had to shut down, they were holding the encryption keys.
So they
so
were able
holding
to give
keys,
yeah.
then you're forced to give them. Imagine when we had to go to investors and say, yeah, we actually have no idea who our users are or how they're using our technology, right? I mean, it's a pretty big thing to give away, to not know anything about your users. Most companies aren't going to do that.
Well, let's talk about that Apple thing there. So Apple's another company that built a system where when the government came to them and said, hey, we have the iPhone of the shooter in San Bernardino, massacre, horrible thing. Maybe this iPhone has information about a future horrible act that's in the works that we could stop. And Tim Cook at Apple said, we can't help you. And then they said, well, here's a way you could help us. And rewrite your software a little so we can get it out of there.
Yeah, and so this is really scary, and I just want to make this point again. Apple helps the government all the time. Wicker, we help the government all the time. And so this isn't, my friends that don't pay very much close attention to this are just like, well, why don't they help the FBI? I mean,
how do you
it's a
help?
dead terrorist.
What can you do?
Well, in the case of Apple or most other companies, they have the cloud data and they have the metadata. And so essentially, but what they asked Apple to do in this case was compel them to write code, new code to change their system, and code that they considered dangerous, or all of us consider dangerous. And this was really scary to me because we built our system so that we don't have any info. But if the government could come to us and tell us to rebuild our system so that they could have lawful intercept, that should be scary for every one of you in this room, because no technology company is going to survive in the United States under that environment, because we can't be forced to do this. It's the job of the FBI and others to find ways to break into our system, but it's not the technology vendor's job to break into their system. And so we need to have a very careful ecosystem here in how we do this.
So if everyone builds in the system, and you mentioned going dark before, right? And that is a term of art for when everyone uses encryption. Every company can be like Apple or Wicker and say, sorry, we can't help you. Wouldn't that make the environment so fertile, so easy for people to plot things and do horrible things that we would be empowering?
Imagine a world without data breaches. Right? I mean, so encryption is really on the other end of it, right? This is what's fueling our economy. And this is how we run everything that we do.
Well, are you telling me, let's say something horrible happens and it was proven, we found out afterwards, that they used Wicker.
Yeah, so I think we proved in the Paris attacks that they used SMS. So should we outlaw SMS? And they used phones and shoes. And by the way, if we outlaw clothes, I can guarantee crime would drop. And if we put...
Oh, I don't know about that.
And if we put cameras in all of our bathrooms.
It's illegal to go naked. There'd be crime all over. But seriously, and this is my last devil's advocate question. I'm getting tired of this. Yeah, but the going dark thing is there's been a lot of instances where wiretaps have proved effective. It's put a lot of bad people in jail, and there's been a lot of cases where intelligence agencies have identified plots in the making there, right? And so there maybe are some things that arguably might be worth giving up just to save our skins.
And so I think that, there are certain things that are worth giving up. I don't believe that private communications is one of them. It's protected by Article 12 and Article 19 of the Universal Human Rights Doctrine. And really my big inspiration behind the importance of private communication comes from George Washington. Because the Brits used to spy on everybody's communications, and they used to censor everybody's information. And George Washington had a crazy theory. And he said, I think that we would have a more stable society if we didn't do those two things. I refuse to spy on my citizens, and I refuse to censor their information, because neither of those things are a crime. And what we've seen is that this great experiment worked. It's one of the things that makes America so great is that we can talk about the government, not worried about our head getting cut off, right? I mean, this is a great place. The United States actually, we do have private communications and uncensored information today, and everywhere deserves this. So we keep a world map of encryption around the world, and the United States is strong in this way, but there are totalitarian regimes all over the world that are fighting private communication and uncensored information every day, because this is how you control your citizens. So I don't really think the fight is as much here in the United States as it is everywhere else around the world that doesn't have this yet. And if they did, we would have a lot stronger global society. And you know what? We're all connected now. So this is something that all of us need to fight and do so that we can work as one.
Okay. So one final question you never answered. Why is it called Wicker?
So Wicker, we were inspired by Mission Impossible, self-destructing messages, and the fuse at the beginning of Mission Impossible is a wick. We added an R on the end without an E because if you're ever thinking of a name for your new company, startup out there, add an R on the end because you create a brand new word that's easily searchable. People are always like, what is it? Did they run out of vowels in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I think we put our intelligence agencies to look for all those missing vowels in startup worlds. Just in the startup arena out there, I saw a lot of missing vowels. I'd like to know.
Yeah, so that's why it's because of Google.
Okay. Well, there it is. Well, actually, so I'm fortunately done about being, a devil's advocate. As you know, I'm a big crypto fan, and I want to thank.
You've been around since the beginning.
Yeah, well, not the very beginning, but
well, the first crypto wars. How's that?
Yeah, first crypto wars. Yes, crypto. There was a lot of crypto in like Julius Caesar's time, and I don't think I was quite around there. But anyway, I want to thank you a lot. Let's give a big hand for Nico, and thank you all, and have a good time tonight. Okay.
All right. Cool.